Have you ever had that feeling you're being watched? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck that tells you something isn't right? Tonight, we're diving into 3 true horror stories that could happen to anyone. These aren't tales of ghosts or monsters from another dimension. These are stories about the unsettling side of everyday life, the kind of fear that lingers long after you've turned off the lights. The kind that makes you wonder if that shadow in the corner of your eye is just a trick of the light, or something more. So, lock your doors, check your windows, and get ready. Our first story is called The Stranger Who Knew My Schedule. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station, just outside my town. It was the kind of place nobody stopped at unless they absolutely had to. You know the type. One of the pumps was always broken. The fluorescent lights overhead would flicker constantly, casting long, dancing shadows across the aisles. And after midnight, the highway outside was almost completely empty, just a long, dark ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the blackness. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. every single night. Followed the same monotonous routine. Wipe down the counter, restock the drinks in the fridge, and then spend hours scrolling on my phone, waiting for the occasional trucker to wander in for coffee. It was boring, but it was predictable, and that's why I noticed him. The first night, he didn't come inside. He just stood across the street, positioned perfectly under a broken streetlight that cast him in a sickly, yellow glow. He was pretending to look at his phone, but his posture was rigid, unnatural. I didn't think much of it at the time, just some guy waiting for a ride. I figured. The second night, he was there again, same spot, same posture, still staring at his phone, or at least, that's what it looked like. By the third night, a knot of unease started to tighten in my stomach. I started paying attention. I started watching him back, and that's when I noticed the time. He always arrived at exactly 1:17 a.m., not 1:15, not 1:20. 1:17, on the dot, every single night. It was unnervingly precise. He never waved. He never even glanced toward the store. He just stood there, waiting. It felt like he was a statue, a permanent fixture in my nightly routine. On the 5th night, I finally decided I had to say something. The creeping dread was becoming too much to handle. I mentioned it to my manager, a woman named Sharon who had seen it all. She just laughed, a loud, barking sound that echoed in the empty store. "Welcome to the night shift, kid," she said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You'll start seeing things. It happens to everyone. But I wasn't seeing things. I knew I wasn't. My gut was screaming at me that this was real. So, the next night, I decided to test my theory. Just before his usual arrival time, I went to the front door and locked it. Then I retreated behind the counter, ducking down so I couldn't be seen from the street, and watched. At 1:17 a.m., right on cue, he lifted his head. He wasn't looking at his phone anymore. He looked directly at the front door. Directly at me, even though the glass was tinted. Even though it was dark inside where I was hiding. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a wide, predatory grin that didn't reach his eyes. A chill snaked its way down my spine. He knew I was watching him. The next night, my heart was pounding before my shift even started. As I walked up to the entrance, I saw a piece of paper taped to the front door. It was a small, folded note. My first thought was that it was from Sharon, maybe about a delivery or a maintenance issue. The note read, "Running late tonight. Don't lock up early." My blood ran cold. I tore the note off the door and rushed inside, my hand shaking. I immediately pulled out the cleaning checklist I kept behind the counter, the one that never, ever left the store, I compared the handwriting. It was a perfect match. Someone had been in here. Someone had been behind the counter that night. At 1:17 a.m., the man wasn't across the street. My eyes darted to the empty spot under the streetlight, a wave of temporary relief washing over me. But it was short-lived. A shadow moved in my peripheral vision, and my head snapped toward the front of the store. He was standing right outside the glass door. He knocked once, a slow, deliberate tap that echoed through the silent gas station. I was frozen behind the counter, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then he leaned forward, his face pressing against the glass, his breath fogging it up. He whispered, his voice muffled but clear enough for me to hear every terrifying word. "I know you take your break at 3:40. It was a simple sentence, but it shattered my world because that was a secret. A small, insignificant detail of my routine that I had never told anyone. Not my manager, not my friends, not my family. It was the moment I realized this wasn't just some creep. This was someone who had been studying me, intimately. I quit the next morning. I called Sharon and told her I wasn't coming back. No explanation given. I couldn't bring myself to go back there, not even to pick up my last paycheck. About a week later, I saw in the local news that the gas station had been shut down permanently. Curiosity got the better of me, and I called the non-emergency police line, mentioning I used to work there. The officer I spoke to was hesitant at first, but then he told me they had found signs that someone had been living in the crawl space in the storage room ceiling, camping out right above the store, right above me. They never found him. I've tried to forget about it, to move on, but sometimes, when I can't sleep and I happen to check the time on my phone, it's 1:17, and every time I see those numbers, I feel that same cold dread, and I can't help but wonder if he's still out there, watching. After a break-in down the street, my wife insisted we install security cameras. This next story is called "The Camera Didn't Record Everything." After a break-in down the street, my wife insisted we install security cameras. One facing the front door, and one in the living room. I told her I thought it was overkill. I mean, we live in a safe neighborhood, right? For weeks, absolutely nothing happened. The cameras just recorded empty rooms and the occasional cat wandering past the window. It felt like a waste of money. Then one morning, everything changed. My wife came into the kitchen looking pale. She asked me, "Why were you walking around the house last night?" I was confused. I told her I wasn't. I'd slept like a log. She didn't look convinced. "Come look at this," she said, and pulled up the security app on her phone. I tried to laugh it off, tell her it was probably a glitch, a shadow, a trick of the light. Anything to make that feeling of dread go away. But she pointed at the screen. "Look at the timestamp," she said. And that's when I saw it. The footage jumped. It went from 2:32 a.m. directly to 4:11 a.m. A whole hour and 39 minutes were just gone. No footage in between. Just a black gap. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my ears straining for any sound. My heart was pounding. I kept glancing at the clock on my phone. To 30, to 31. Then, at exactly 2:30 a.m., the lamp on my nightstand flickered. My entire body went cold. A second later, my phone buzzed. A motion alert from the living room camera. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. But when I tried to check the live feed, the screen was just black. Connection lost, the error message read. I tried again and again, but nothing. It was like the camera was completely dead. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, listening, waiting, but I heard nothing else. The next morning, I checked the app again. The camera was working perfectly fine, and the recorded footage was back. I scrolled back to the previous night, my stomach in knots, and there it was. A new clip. Starting at 2:32 a.m. it showed me. I was standing in the middle of the living room, facing the camera. Just standing there, I wasn't moving. My eyes were wide open, staring directly into the lens. The timestamp in the corner of the screen ticked forward, second by second, minute by minute. I stood there, completely still, for 1 hour and 39 minutes, until exactly for 11 a.m., and then, the footage just cuts off. I have absolutely no memory of any of it. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember walking into the living room. I don't remember standing there for over an hour and a half. That was it. We grabbed a few things, got in the car, and drove to a hotel. We couldn't stay in that house another night. We came back the next day, in the bright afternoon sunlight, to pack. As I walked into the living room, I noticed the security camera was on the floor. It had been unplugged. I picked it up and decided to check the memory card one last time, just to see if it had caught who or what had unplugged it. There was one final clip on the card. The file was tiny, just a few seconds long. I played it. The camera seemed to turn on by itself, the view jerky as if it was being held. Then a shape leaned in close, filling the entire frame. It was dark and blurry, but I could make out a long, pale face into dark holes where I should be. And then a voice, a dry, raspy whisper, came from my laptop speakers. It said, "You weren't supposed to wake up." We moved out 2 weeks later. We couldn't sell the house fast enough. We didn't tell the new owners anything. We just wanted to get away. A few months later, I ran into one of my old neighbors at the grocery store. He asked me how we were doing, and then he mentioned the new family who'd moved into our old house. He said they'd removed all the security cameras. They told him they kept hearing footsteps at night, but whenever they went to look, there was never anyone there. The final story tonight is one that still sends a shiver down my spine every time I think about it. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't what we see, but what we hear. This one is called "The Last Voicemail My Brother Left." My brother Mark was a free spirit, the kind of person who found peace in solitude. His church was the wilderness. He loved hiking, especially alone. He'd say it was his way of clearing his head, of sorting through the noise of the world. He'd pack a small bag, tell our parents where he was headed, and just disappear into the mountains for a day or two. He always came back refreshed, with stories of breathtaking views and close encounters with wildlife. He was experienced, careful, and knew the trails like the back of his hand. We never worried, not really. That all changed one weekend in late October. Mark had decided to tackle a new trail in a sprawling national park in Colorado. The autumn colors were at their peak, and he was excited to capture some photos. He promised to be back by Sunday evening, but Sunday came and went. No call, no text. Monday morning, my mom called me, her voice tight with a worrying she was trying to hide. We reported him missing. The search began almost immediately. Park rangers and volunteer teams fanned out across the area. They found his car parked at the trailhead, exactly where he said it would be. A little further up the path, They found his backpack, neatly placed beside a large rock. It was bizarre. His water bottle was still half full, his snacks were untouched, and his camera was inside. But there was no sign of Mark, no footprints leading away from the pack, no broken branches, nothing to suggest a struggle or an accident. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and dread. The search parties grew larger. Helicopters scanned the terrain from above, but every lead went cold. The park was vast, a dense maze of trees and canyons. The rangers were professional but grim. They spoke of the dangers of the wilderness, sudden weather changes, disorientation, wild animals. But none of it fit. Mark was too prepared for that. 3 agonizing days after he disappeared, my phone rang. I scrambled to grab it, my heart pounding against my ribs. The caller ID flashed a name that made my breath catch in my throat. Mark, it was his number. Relief washed over me, so powerful it almost buckled my knees. He's okay, I thought. He found a signal. He's calling for help. Mark, I shouted into the phone, my voice cracking. Mark, are you there? Where are you? Silence? No, not silence. There was a sound on the other end. Breathing. It was heavy, ragged, and uneven, like someone was struggling for every gasp of air. It was a wet, guttural sound, filled with a sense of desperate exhaustion. I could almost feel the cold air he was pulling into his lungs. Mark, talk to me. Is that you? I pleaded. The breathing continued for what felt like an eternity, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the call disconnected. The line went dead. I immediately called back, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, my thumb jabbing at the screen, but it was no use. I contacted the police, telling them about the call. They tried to trace it, but the signal was too weak, bouncing off to many cell towers in the mountainous region. An officer tried to reassure me, suggesting it was probably a delayed signal from his phone, a pocket dial from days ago that was just now getting through the network. A technical glitch, but I knew what I heard. That wasn't a pocket dial. That was the sound of someone in serious trouble. That night, sleep was impossible. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that horrifying sound over and over in my mind. Around 2 a.m., unable to take the silence anymore, I picked up my phone to scroll through old photos of Mark, anything to feel close to him. That's when I saw it. A notification icon I'd missed in my panic earlier. One new voicemail. My hand trembled as I navigated to the voicemail inbox. The message was from Mark's number. I looked at the timestamp, and a cold dread seeped into my bones. It was recorded just 2 hours after the park rangers had officially declared him missing on Monday. Before the strange phone call, before the real search had even gotten into full swing. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear, bracing myself. His voice filled the speaker, and it was nothing like the ragged breathing I'd heard earlier. It was calm, eerily calm. It was the same familiar tone he used when he was leaving a casual message, but there was an undertone I couldn't place. A strange, hollow resignation. Hey, it's me, he said. The background was quiet, just a faint whisper of wind. I'm okay. He paused, and in that short silence, 1,000 questions raced through my mind. Okay. How could he be okay? Where was he? Then he spoke again, his voice dropping slightly. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For worrying us, for being late. The calmness in his voice was so unnerving, so out of place. It felt scripted, detached. Another long pause followed. I could hear him take a slow, deliberate breath. If you hear this, he said, his voice now barely above a whisper. Don't come looking for me. Before I could even process those chilling words, another sound emerged from the background of the recording. It started faintly, but it was unmistakable. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't an animal rustling in the leaves. It was the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, crunching on dry leaves and twigs. They weren't walking in a straight line, they were circling. The sound grew slightly louder, then faded, then grew louder again, as if someone or something was walking in a slow, deliberate perimeter around him while he was on the phone. The message ended abruptly right after that. The search teams never found him. They covered every square inch of that park, but Mark was gone. After weeks turned into months, the official search was called off. He was declared presumed dead. We held a memorial, but without a body, there was no closure. Just a gaping hole in our family and a voicemail that made no sense. Why would he say he was sorry? And who was with him? What were those footsteps? Life tried to move on, but the mystery haunted me. Months later, long after I'd given up hope of ever hearing from him again, it happened. I was at home, late at night, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Another new voicemail. My heart stopped. There was no caller ID, no number, no timestamp, just the notification icon. With a sense of absolute dread, I played the message. At first, there was only static, a harsh, crackling noise that sounded like a dead channel on an old radio. I was about to hang up, thinking it was just a glitch. But then, through the static, a voice emerged. It was a whisper, distorted and faint, but I knew it instantly. It was Mark, and he only said 6 words, words that have been seared into my memory ever since. I told you not to follow. The moment the whisper ended, my phone screen went black. It died instantly, even though it had been fully charged just minutes before. It never turned on again. I took it to a repair shop the next day, and the technician said the motherboard was completely fried, as if it had been hit by a massive power surge. I don't know what happened to my brother in those woods. I don't know if he met a person or something else. I don't know who he told not to follow, but that last message wasn't for the search party. I think it was for me, a final, terrifying warning. I still go hiking sometimes. It's hard not to, living in Colorado. But I don't go alone anymore, and when the forest gets quiet, when the birds stop singing and the wind dies down, I don't listen for animals. I hold my breath, and I listen for footsteps, slow, circling,